Well, hello, everyone. My name is Lavona Grow. I'm the lead on the Emerging Faith Group for the Climate Crisis Policy Initiative, and that is now morphing to the Earth Bill Network. I'm a volunteer, and as I mentioned, everybody here really is a volunteer. I volunteer with the Unitarian Universalists for Social Justice here in Washington, D.C. We do direct lobbying with the Capitol Hill Advocacy Corps, now doing it virtually. My church is the UU Church of Arlington, Virginia. I live in Arlington, Virginia, on the land of the Powhatan and the Monacan and Cherokee tribes. There is a lot of pent-up energy of environmental climate activists now with a new administration and the new legislative agenda that we have potential for. And the next 14 months is really our best opportunity that we have to get comprehensive legislation passed. So I think we all feel that urgency of now. And I feel that part of our responsibility is to address this faithful work with an eye towards the way the faith communities can put our values into action. I like to think about us exercising our moral muscle. We need to train it and use it, or we're going to lose it. I'd like to now introduce Chris Peterson. Is she with us? There we go. Hi. And she's the director and facilitator at the Lowland Center in coastal Louisiana. She is trained in urban planning, anthropology, and theology. In fact, she is the Reverend Dr. Christina Peterson. She is a Presbyterian minister. She's also from the Salamate Indigenous tribe. So welcome, Christina.
Thank you very much. Humbly, I come to you this afternoon on the homelands of the Portashan, Takapa, Ishtak, Chitimacha, Chawacha nations, and I am honored to be in your presence with this group and with two amazing women who will be speaking, Miss Sharon Levine and also Salote Soko. So Salote and I have had a relationship over the last several years that has merged because of our mutual interest of the Unitarian Universalist and the Lowlander Center on having a human and environmental rights approach with community-driven solutions for issues. And as a result, we have partnered with people around the world, literally, on climate displacement, climate adaptation. Our voices have been heard at the United Nations and on the Hill in many different ways. And it's through that power of the community voice and that power of hope and that power of justice that we have was able to link the Unitarians together with Ms. Sharon Levine, who is the director, the founder and the director of St. James Rising. Listen carefully to Sharon's story. Listen closely as she's speaking with the power of Jeremiah. She is speaking truth to power, and we are the Hananiahs in the room who have become complicit in the types of ways in which we have ignored the complexity of all the kinds of issues that are placed on communities. And it's up to us to walk and shoulder that burden and to change that burden. But in order to do so, we need to hear from the Jeremiah voice that speaks so brilliantly. And it is with that I am humbly moved and honored to introduce to you Miss Sharon Levine. Thank you for being here.
Thank you all for having me. Can everyone hear me? All right, okay. I'm Sharon Levine from St. James, Louisiana. I'm the director and founder of a faith-based organization called Rise St. James. Rise St. James came about because of the industry and the environment. We have 12 industries in the 5th district where I live. We had 9 in the 4 districts. These 2 districts are predominantly Black districts. When I used to go to meetings with the Help Association, which is the humanitarian enterprise of loving people, I started going to those meetings in 2015. That's where I learned about the industries in St. James Parish. I didn't know all the things that I know today. In 2016, I was diagnosed with autoimmune hepatitis. I didn't relate it to industry at that time. But as time went on, we talked about everything in the meetings besides the effect of the chemicals. All we talked about was what industry was coming in. And we were told that there's nothing you could do about it because our public officials, when they approve something, it's a done deal. So I learned that just by sitting in the meetings. And then in 2018, I was teaching school, and my daughter informed me that the governor had just approved a $9.4 billion industry to come into St. James. They were celebrating, and she happened to see it on TV. So it annoyed me because we already have 12 in the 5th district, and they were celebrating this other industry that's coming in with these harmful effects. And that didn't sit good with me at all. So I brought it up to the Help Association and asked them, what could we do about it? They said we couldn't do anything about it because when the governor approves something, it's final. And in my mind, I knew there's more to life than just what somebody would tell you. So I set on my journey to pray. When I'd come from the meetings with the Help Association, I would cry because I was told there was nothing you could do about it. And I live on 20 acres of land, and I felt like, why should I have to leave my home or give up anything because industry wants to come in here? So I would go to bed at night after these dreadful meetings. We had them once a month. And I would lay in my bed and I would cry and I would ask God if I had to move. But I didn't wait for an answer. I was just depressed. I went to sleep depressed. So as time went on, I prayed on my porch one day. I think it was a Sunday. And I watched the red birds go from one tree to the next. So I said, I was reading my Bible because I read my Bible on my front porch. And I prayed and I asked God if he wanted me to give up my land, the land that he gave me. And to my surprise, he startled me. He said, no. So I asked him if he wanted me to give up the home that he gave me. He said, no. And I said, I look at the birds going from one, I look at the beautiful sight of the red birds, and I said, red birds mean something. So I asked God, I said, what do you want me to do? And he said, fight. One word, fight. And I started crying. I said, I don't know how to fight. I don't know what to do. But that was when I stopped and I listened. That's when I paused. I gave him time to answer. And that's the day he answered me. So I went on my journey praying and praying. Then all of a sudden, out of the blue sky, with the Help Association, we had a march on the 8th of September, 2018. We had that march. That was my first time, me and my daughter, ever getting up in public to speak about industry. We wrote our speech because we weren't public speakers, so we had to write everything down and read it. And then from there, it flew. People were taking pictures of us and all. I didn't know about all these different things that goes on when you do public speaking. So after that, I kept on praying. Then God told me to go on and call a meeting. I called a meeting. It was in my den. We had almost 10 people. I stood up there and told them I didn't want Formosa to come in. This is what I want. And they all agreed with me. Since then, we had 2 members of that first meeting who passed away. 2 of them passed away in 2019. Then the second meeting I had, it was in my garage. I had almost 20 people. And I told them what we wanted to do, and they agreed. And from there, Rise St. James flew. It was just like God was in the driver's seat and we sitting in the back seat, and it just went. It just flew. And so I know it's God is doing this, because I don't know anything about an organization, how to set up an organization or what to do. God had brought so many people to Rise St. James, to St. James Parish. When we started with this, it was about Formosa. People from New Orleans everywhere started to help us, join with us, and now it's national. But it's not me, it's God. God is in the driver's seat. God is moving this organization. And he changed me. He changed me to the point where every time I talk about him and I talk about what he did, it makes me feel so emotional, because he chose me. He could have chosen anybody in St. James, but he chose me. Is it because I went to him and kept on his time? I don't know, but he chose me. So I always tell him, thank you for choosing me. Somebody that didn't know anything about the environment, anything about the plants, anything about the chemicals, none of that, but he chose me. So now I thank him for choosing me to do the work that he wants me to do to save our community. All we want to do is live. We want to breathe clean air. We want to drink clean water. We want to live like we used to live way back when I was in elementary school. We used to go outside and play. We used to go outside and take that deep breath and breathe that clean air. We can't do that now. Our pecan trees, our fruit trees, our vegetable gardens, that's gone. The pecan trees that I have about 5 pecan trees. One may bear more than the others, but they skip a year now. And one tree, they bear the pecan, but the pecans are hollow. We don't have our blackberry vines anymore. We would make blackberry dumpling. We don't have that anymore. We had the persimmon tree. This year, if I got 1 per week, I got plenty. So I was driving down the highway yesterday morning, and the industry at Moselle the chemicals were so strong in the air. I had to make sure I had my mask on, but I could still smell it through the mask. And I called the Environmental Protection Agency to report it. And they told me, they gave me a report number and everything. I've been doing that for so long. That don't work. It doesn't work at all. So every now and then I still do it. But the people in St. James are asking me to continue doing the works because they want to live also. They don't want to pack up and leave. They say this is their home. They want to stay here. Some people come here talking about buying out. That is not an option. Only option we have is to want to stay in our hometown. We want to live here. And if the industry cannot bring down their emissions to the state level or to a safe level, we want them to ship on out. We don't want them here poisoning us. If we would have known this years ago, they wouldn't have gotten this far with bringing all this industry in here. And now they want to bring Formosa in here? I don't think so. That industry, in that complex, they will have 14 industries inside of that complex. We already have 12. We barely breathe in the air now. So if 14 more come in here, that's triple the amount in the 5th district, and it's double amount throughout the parish, especially the 4th district. So why should St. James be the sacrifice zone for the state? Why they want to put something in here that's already overburdened to us already with the industries to add some more to us? I think they want us to just die off. They're not trying to find a solution for us. They just want us to pack up, leave. We can't pack up and leave. We don't have the funds to pack up and leave. And at my age, I don't want to start all over again anyway. This is my grandparents' land, and I'm not going to give it up. And I'm not going to pack up and leave because I know what God told me, and I know when God spoke to me. And he speaks to me daily. He talks to me all the time. I don't do anything without him. I don't even get on a Zoom call without him. I bring him with me everywhere I go. And he holds my hand. He walks with me. And he talks to me. because I listen now. At one time, I didn't listen. I would talk to God and I would go on about my business. Now I talk and I stop and I listen. That's what happened to me on that porch that day. When I sat down, I listened. And when he told me to fight, God knows. I don't know why he chose me, but I'm glad he did. And I'm going to do whatever I can to save St. James Parish. This is where I live. This is where I want to stay. I have 2 daughters that moved because of the pollution. They were getting sick. I have 2 brothers with cancer. My neighbors on both sides passed away with cancer. How many more people have to die? We need to get these plants to be accountable for what they have done to St. James and not let any more come in here. That's why we're trying to write letters to President Biden to ask him to put a moratorium on the industries that's coming in. No more. And the ones that's there, no more expansions. I'm telling you, it's hard, and all we want to do is live and breathe clean air, clean water, and have productive soil. That's all we're asking for.
Ms. Sharon, have you thought about reparations that would help money coming in from the Biden administration to help clean up the soil, the air, and give money to the families that have had to carry this burden for so long? I know that the COVID has been higher in your parish and mine, and that the rates of asthma and the amount of just having to buy water because the water is not safe to drink is much higher. So the burden that you carry because of the industry, what can you say a little bit about that? And maybe that's one place where the folks on the Hill could help start, is reparations for the families that are in distress at this point, along with closing down all the pollutants.
Yes. I feel like we should ask them to cover the cost that occurred from these industries that caused the illnesses of the people in St. James. I asked them to do a health study on the people in St. James, because the industry, I feel, caused a lot of these illnesses in the people that live here. If we can do a study of all the industries and the chemicals that they are using to make whatever product they are making, if those chemicals are found in our bodies, let them be accountable for what we have now, for what the people in St. James are suffering with. Let them be accountable. Because just like I said, when I found out I had autoimmune hepatitis, I did my research and they said it came from industrial pollutants. When I found out I had aluminum in my body, it came from industrial pollutants. I looked it up and I saw it. I read it for myself. So it would show up in the blood. It would show up in the urine. I would take that money, do a health study, make these chemical plants accountable. If they can't be accountable, make them shut down, because EPA are coming there and pretend like they're checking out the industry to see what's going on. That's lies. That's a bunch of lies. I know people that told me that they work there, and they say that when they come in with their tablet and try to see what's going on to check the place out, they tell them to put it, everything is good, and they give them money under the table. So no, we need somebody from somewhere else who's going to be faithful and truthful and do the right thing. If they can't do the right thing, don't hire them to go do the work that maybe we can do. Maybe some of us could be educated, teach us what to do, and we'll go in there and investigate the industry. And whatever we find wrong, if they don't clean it up in 30 days, shut them down. Because in the process, you're killing people. You're still killing people. People are still dying. So that's what I would do with that money. I would take that money, educate the public, hire someone to educate, to be educated about all these things that goes on in the plants, and go from there. And the families that lost people because of the industry, give them something for their pain and suffering, for the bills that they have that occurred from these industries that's here now. That's what I would do with the money. I really would.
Something else that folks may need to know is that you're not getting paid by anyone. you are doing this because you've been called by God. And there are other folks along what we call Death Cancer Alley and through the region here that are fighting all these various components of climate and pollution. Do you think it would be just to have the Biden administration or the different agencies be able to make it easier for grassroots groups like yourself to have the money to operate, to be able to be those educators and to be those organizers in the field?
Mm-hmm. Yes, I think so. I think the money would go to educate them, and they would go do the work that the EPA fails to do and our public official fail to do. But let it be someone that's going to be truthful and not lie and not take money up under the table. Like
so the
me,
possibility of having on-ground monitors from the community.
Yes, that's what I think. I really do. But I was told that the industry is paying me. People in the community would say those things, but the industry is not paying me. Why would the industry pay me to fight them? But all I'm getting is a stipend from the organization, which I wasn't getting before. I was doing all the works mostly with me and a couple of other people. But that's about the money that I'm getting. But I'm not, no, the industry is not paying me. No, they wouldn't be that stupid to pay me. Might pay somebody else. But no.
Selecta, do you have questions?
No, Chris.
If you had a magic wand, Sharon, what would you ask the folks in Washington, D.C. to do right now and then down the road?
If I had a magic wand, I would ask the president to send St. James back to the way it were when I was a little girl. We can have our gardens, our pecan trees, and the community would go back and be full like it was before. Have our grocery stores back, our post office back, our high school back, and shut these industries down, pull them out. Because they're going to lie and say they're doing the right thing, and they're not going to do the right thing. So shut them down and make them pack up and leave and give us our land and our community back. I would like to see St. James be rebuilt again.
So you truly are a Jeremiah who is calling out for the rebuilding of homes and the land in the midst of all the destruction that Hananiah and the powers that be have brought upon you. And it's for us to wake up of how we can change and be part of the solution with Jeremiah.
Yes, thank you. That's right.
Sharon, thank you so very, very much. And I think there might be another, there is a question about class action lawsuit on behalf of the community members. I believe there has been work by Joel Waltzer. You've had the bishop of the Catholic Church from the Baton Rouge area. You've also had General Honore. Do you want to speak to a little bit of who has been, and also the Greater New Orleans Interfaith Climate Change Group, some of the different groups that have been helpful?
The Poor People's Campaign, Reverend William Barber, he came down to speak with us and also to help us. And we had just about all of the organizations in New Orleans, just about all of them been helping. And Concerned Citizens with Robert Taylor, that's a big help also. And we have 4 organizations in St. James, but I'm the only one that developed an organization that would fight the industry, because they said they didn't do that. They did other things like have meetings, and that was it. But they didn't do any work. They didn't do any groundwork. They just accepted what came into the community. And when Rise St. James started, we didn't have a purpose or agenda. All we know is we were trying to save our lives. That's how it got started. Then we had to do a purpose and an objective and all that other stuff. All we knew was we didn't want to move and we wanted to live. And so we started an organization. That was the goal, to protect the people of St. James Parish. And to protect them, we have to keep these industries out of here and make them accountable. Give us clean water. We have to buy water. I had to buy a filter because I was tired of picking up those big crates of water to bring in the house. So I bought a filter. So we need to be compensated for every distress that we went through with these industries and make them all accountable or shut them down. And with God's help, they might be shut down.
Thank you. And Salote, one of the comments that Ms. Sharon made is, we don't want to move. We have, and you have worked with us along the coast because we have a lot of communities that are threatened and going underwater that are trying to do radical adaptation. Some are looking at resettlement. And you have, as a UUSC, been amazing with what you have done with your fighting the powers and principalities. Could you tell us a little bit about what all your work encompasses?
Sure. Thank you, Chris. And thank you, Ms. Sharon. We continue to be inspired by your work and the work of many other community organizers around the country and around the world. And that is really the fuel to the work that UUSC does. And for those of you who are not aware of UUSC, it stands for Unitarian Universalist Service Committee. We are referred to as the Service Committee in many circles, an international human rights organization that supports and advances human rights around the world and fights oppression, systems of oppression. We're about 80 years old, so I would say that we've learned many, many things from our partners about what to do and what not to do in order to be effective allies. And I think that highlighting, two key things or principles that we adopt in our work to be able to help us to do that effectively is what I'm going to share today. There's, you've seen Ms. Sharon, you've heard Ms. Sharon speak. There's an inherent power and fierceness that communities who are facing the struggles that they are facing today, that they have, and all they need is support from allies like us in the movement. So we do that in our work, recognizing the vast knowledge and wisdom that partners have, the wealth and resources and grit and resilience that they hold in their hands and in their hearts and in their voices. And we do this by recognizing that there is power in communities, that they hold that power, that shifts and transforms and informs the work that we do and how we do it. So we work collaboratively with partners. We work by basically just following the lead of partners. I mean, whatever Chris tells me as a partner, I do. And, she tells me what to do all the time. So that's what our institution does. We have, there's some practical ways that we've done that. We've now changing the way that we use language in our organization. We no longer refer to communities as vulnerable and marginalized. In so many ways we do that without even knowing the effect that it does to our partnership or to the ways that communities see us as allies. So we were really mindful about those small but very powerful ways that shifts relationships and power dynamics. So we try to use our privilege as a historically white organization, institution, to support our partners in a responsive and reciprocal way. And part of that is recognizing the ways that we have not been so effective as allies, like using that kind of language or going to events and speaking on behalf of our partners. And that's really shifted. I would say I've only been in the organization for 5 years, but we've really tried to do that. Chris mentioned that we go to the UN and to the Capitol to do our advocacy. It's no longer a right for us to speak on behalf of partners. We used to do that in the past, but we've learned. We are a learning community and an organization. Now we make sure that we get our partners there on their terms, that they are allowed to speak their truth to power, as Sharon has done for us so fearlessly today. We provide the resources, we mobilize, in some cases, UU congregations around the country to do that. And it's all centered on the decisions and the experiences and that our community partners have. So that's one of the ways that we do that actively and in principle. We have adopted a listening and learning posture. Historically, strategies have been adopted by staff and by the institution before we do our work, and this is 5 to 10 year work, long-term work. Now we're more willing to change. And I think that's it's not always easy for an institution that's 80 years old. But I think that throughout the years, as we listen and learn from our partners, there is a clear need for us to be able to be flexible and to change and to be responsive as we do this work together.
Salote, does there happen to be a video about your anniversary of the history of UUSC that might give the folks an opportunity to see a little bit of the history?
Yes, UUSC was founded in the 1940s by the Sharps, Wade Still and Martha Sharp, and I'm happy to share that. And Lavona, maybe you'll also have it. It's a documentary, and I'm happy to share it if Lavona doesn't.
Thank you very, very much. And I think, Lavona, our time is up. Is that correct?
Yes, I'm afraid it is, but we're hoping that we can continue a relationship with you and learn how we can, work eye to eye with you. And as the legislation comes forward, because of course that's what we're kind of about, is federal legislation. As legislation is crafted, and we're actually in conversation, a couple of us, with the service committee about some writing of legislation that will address some of the displacement work. Well, I'm so thankful that you've really helped us, center our work. I'd like to bring Karena Gore in at this point. And thank you so much for mentioning, Salote, about the language, not using marginalized and not using vulnerable. I think many of us are kind of behind the time on that. So I found that helpful. And about listening and learning posture and bringing, people not to speak on their behalf, but we have to learn how to, do this in a respectful way. And I'd like to learn too, if a person is not able to come, to speak for themselves, how we can amplify or, respectfully raise their voice. So Karena, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you. Very brief. I just want to give my deep respectful regards to all three of you. Thank you, Christina. Wonderful to meet you. Thank you, Salote, for that great advice. I also found that extremely helpful. And to you, Sharon, I have followed your work for some time. I'm so moved and inspired by your voice. Thank you for asking and for listening, for praying in the way that you have done, and for stepping into this role. I believe that it is profound what you are bringing to the table, to the public square, to our nation and to our world as we grapple with this crisis. The aggregate effect of projects like the ones that you've talked about in your district is what's killing the planet. And in so many cases in our country, this is done in this top-down way. The idea that a community who lives there has no say in something so violent to the air and the water and the soil that is in their bodies as well is absolutely abhorrent. And that term slow violence, I think, is very important for us to remember. This is something we must change through legislation. And the idea that this was told to you, you know, we think about the permitting process. I know how hard you fought through that process. And the idea with permitting sometimes is actually to permit something that would be otherwise obviously illegal and morally impermissible. No one in their right mind would allow this to happen. The system is set up to permit it. And so we have to change that. We have to center communities and ethics in economic development decisions. The measurements being used for this, I know what they are. We all have heard what they are, what they hold up, the political battles that they create around jobs and so on. We know there are no jobs on a dead planet. We know that jobs are often held up in place of the capacity of people to put food on their table, to feel safe in their homes, to breathe air, to feel free. And that is where I think faith communities can come into play, not only in correcting that conversation, because of course there are jobs and income to be created in healthy ways for our communities instead of in toxic and harmful ways, but also for I think to bring the prophetic truth that you have modeled for us, Ms. Sharon, in the way that you have that prophetic truth. That is what we need to bring back for so many in religious communities, to really be uncompromising in that. The pastoral work to care for people through this, and also the practical work of helping to show up. And I think with this Climate Crisis Policy Forum, with these wonderful people assembled here listening, you have people who are willing to volunteer their time, who are willing to be foot soldiers and leaders in their own way with their own gifts, to be behind the legislation. I've heard you speak about plastics. You understand plastics. You understand how it's connected to petrochemical pollution. And you understand the money and the power behind it. And the throwaway culture, the way you talk about the way things used to be in your community is beautiful. You know, we want to lift that up. And we're studying in this climate crisis policy the bills that are in place about environmental justice and about plastics and about petrochemicals. And so what you've done to galvanize this group is really, really meaningful. And I want you to know that everyone here, I think, really wants to have your back, get to work. We know we got a new administration. We have a chance to change things. Thank you for being a hero, a heroine. And thank you, Salote. Thank you, Christina. Thank you, everybody. I'm really inspired and ready to get to work.